Hello, coaches. Welcome to the Coach C Basketball Analytics Podcast. In today's episode, I want to talk a little about the foundation behind my coaching philosophy, the basketball environments where I learned the game, the coaches who influenced me, my experiences coaching at different levels of basketball, and how the early use of numbers and statistical tendencies, before analytics had even become part of basketball vocabulary, helped shape the way I adapted, evolved, and searched for ways to compete and win. I grew up during a time when basketball was deeply connected to fundamentals, teamwork, spacing, transition, and understanding how to play together. That was the basketball culture during that time, and that was how we were trained and developed as players. As a young player within that culture, I learned that becoming a fundamentally sound player was the goal. Because of that, and because of the example set by older players, we worked extremely hard on our individual skills. It was a matter of pride. As a young player within that culture, I learned that becoming a fundamentally sound player was the goal. Our goal was to become as good as the older players we watched and admired. They were our idols, and they set a strong example for us growing up in basketball. We worked extremely hard on our individual skills during practice and also alone in the gym, working on ball handling and shooting. It was a matter of pride. Brazil has always had a strong basketball culture and a tradition of developing very skilled players and great shooters in both men's and women's basketball. Because of my passion for the game and desire to learn, I also spent a lot of time around basketball. In our basketball culture, the younger divisions practice before the adult teams, and I would stay to watch the older players practice, go to their games, and observe the coaches. At the same time, the game itself was also evolving. The introduction of the three-point line had a major impact on basketball and forced players, coaches, and teams to adapt offensively and defensively. And that adjustment did not happen overnight. At the same time, the influence of the NBA was also changing basketball. The NBA game during that period had a different rhythm, heavily influenced by transition basketball, athleticism, and creativity. The ABA had also brought a different style and excitement to the game, with players driving and slashing to the basket, finishing at high speed with finesse and creativity, and athletes playing above the rim. One of the things I enjoyed watching during that period was the Boston Celtics fast break philosophy under coach Red Auerbach and the importance of decision making and sharing the ball in transition. As a player, I was also strongly influenced by several Brazilian coaches who helped shape the way I started seeing and understanding basketball. Those experiences and basketball influences had a major impact on the way I started seeing and understanding the game, especially in areas like transition basketball, defensive pressure, conditioning, and creating more shot attempts than your opponent. I also became heavily influenced by defensive concepts built around playing in line with the ball, controlling rhythm, creating pressure, and forcing teams out of their offensive flow. That was where I learned many of the principles that later became what I call my combo and pressure defensive foundations. As I continued growing within basketball, first as a player and later as a coach, I also started adapting the way I viewed transition offense, defensive pressure, and overall game control. Those ideas continued developing through my experiences in NCAA Division I, national teams, professional basketball, and international basketball environments throughout the Middle East and Asia. As I continued coaching and studying the game, the way I viewed transition offense and defensive pressure also started evolving. I started realizing that traditional offenses and common predictable pattern plays could eventually become easier for opponents to anticipate. As teams started recognizing transition patterns and spacing, I began moving toward a more positionless transition philosophy built around adaptability, spacing, freedom of movement, and creating mismatches. The objective was to create and explore the abilities of my players at the perimeter, especially by forcing teams with taller players to defend outside the lane and away from their comfort zones. Initially, one of the goals was to force opponents into zone defenses to protect key players from foul trouble and defensive mismatches. Once teams switched to zone, we would take advantage of the shooting abilities of our players and the spacing opportunities created against the zone. Pressure defense also became an important part of that philosophy because it influenced matchups and forced many opponents into smaller lineups. Over time, teams often had to put more guards on the floor instead of keeping bigger lineups against us. Defensively, I started blending zone and individual defensive concepts to defend players according to their importance to their team's offensive point production, rhythm, and overall offensive balance. Ball pressure, passing lane denials, and denial of key passes also became important defensive strategies depending on the importance of the opponent's players and their offensive roles. I also used pressure, denial, and statistical tendencies to disrupt rhythm and force teams away from their strengths. Eventually, all those experiences started connecting together. Possession time, points per possession, control of the rhythm of the game. During my early coaching years, I was already experimenting with ways to record shooting percentages, rebounds, tendencies, and other statistical information to better understand my team and the opponent. During that period, I also started exploring some of the early computer programs and applications used to record basic statistical information. Some of those systems could even generate simple box scores automatically after games. The more I used those applications, the more I began identifying some of the key analytics of the game that could tilt the game, bridge talent gaps, and increase our team's chances of success against any level of opponent. The more I studied those numbers, the more I started developing game plans designed to reduce opponents' offensive efficiency to a level where they would become beatable based on our scoring capabilities, while also forcing them to play outside their comfort zones offensively. That was also when I started realizing that analytics could become a powerful tool to help me better understand and control the game while it was being played, and not only after the game was over. This data-driven approach also allowed me and my coaching staff to monitor the effectiveness of our data-driven strategies against our game plan goals during the game itself, instead of only evaluating performance after the game was over. That allowed us to adapt strategies, make adjustments, and make better decisions while the game was still being played. At that time, the term analytics was basically non-existent in basketball. Over time, that became one of the biggest foundations behind my philosophy. For me, analytics was never just about numbers. It was about understanding possessions, rhythm, tendencies, decision-making, and how to create advantages before the opponent could adjust. Basketball continues to evolve. Players evolve. Offenses evolve. Defenses evolve. The game evolves. And as coaches, we have to keep learning. We have to keep adapting. If we don't, the game keeps moving with or without us. That wraps up today's episode. Thank you again for listening to the Coach C Basketball Analytics Podcast. I truly appreciate everyone who continues to support the podcast, share the episodes, and be part of these basketball conversations. I look forward to having you with us again in the next episode. Until next time, control possessions, control rhythm, make decisions, and never stop adapting